Good morning, everyone. And for those of you visiting from Queensland, we just wanted to remind you this morning that you're not in Queensland anymore. Minister Sinodinos, great to have you back to the ANU. ESO Director General Tim Dzeu, also great to have you back to the ANU. Deputy Secretary Sue Weston and colleagues and friends, many have spent, in some cases, 21 years trying to make this event happen. It goes back to when I first came to Australia, Minister, and in the changeover from the election of 1996, ESO, which was the great plan back then, got derailed. And it is great here in 2017 to be able to do something which, when I became Vice Chancellor of ANU, I said that I would be prepared to become Vice Chancellor of ANU, if only to make ESO happen. So that means I suppose I could be resigning today, but I probably won't. So as Vice Chancellor of ANU and a fellow astronomer, I'm very pleased to welcome a new strategic partnership between Australia and European astronomy through the European Southern Observatory and the Commonwealth Government. We've just seen the G20 unfold. And indeed, if you were to look at the G20 nations, they would also be the A20, the Astronomy 20 nations, except for Australia would be very clearly at the G7 table in astronomy. And that's due to hard work, good fortune, great technology. And this partnership, I think, more than any single thing we can do, can help make sure that Australia remains one of the great contributors to astronomy in the future. Universities and our research organizations like CSIRO at the heart of international collaboration in astronomy. And no matter what our colleagues such as President Xi Jinping and President Putin and President Trump do, astronomers will be working in the backgrounds, just as we've done. Astronomers were one of the groups that opened up our relationships with China back in the 1960s, and that was acknowledged when I visited with the Prime Minister last year. We've, of course, helped invent Wi-Fi, and looking around right now, you can see one of our colleagues on television ads for a car, which was a new territory for us astronomers. We help set up the people that are empowering our nation and the technology behind it. And of course, we do it because it's interesting, it's inspirational, and it is a very important part of being human. So I am personally looking forward with great anticipation to the things that are going to emerge from this collaboration, the knowledge, the technology, and it is my sincere privilege to be able to introduce to you the Senator, Honorable Arthur Sinodinos, the Australian Minister for Industry, Innovation and Science, to speak to you today. Minister?
Well, thanks very much, Brian. To you, Professor Dzeu, and your team, you are very welcome in Australia. I mean, we love people coming here from all parts of the world, but today in particular, you're welcome because this is an exciting day which takes Australian astronomy to the next step on a journey which has been going on for a long time. But the ESO in particular, and this partnership is very important to Australia. I believe it'll be of great benefit to the ESO, and I believe ultimately, globally, it will be a great benefit by bringing our collective resources together. I don't need to tell any of you here about the relevance of astronomy and its potential for global innovation. As you know from a career of engagement and discovery, astronomy makes profound discoveries about our universe that are critical to how we understand it. Perhaps more than any other science, astronomy captures our imagination, fills us with fundamental questions about who we are, how we are, and why we are. Now, you know, when astronomy is out there trying to figure out what's happening with the universe? Is it expanding? The question you sort of ask yourself is, what is it expanding into? What does infinity mean? I mean, these are incredible questions. They do your mind in. You know, we think about a week being a long time in politics, and then when you look at what astronomy tells us about the age of the universe, the space-time continuum and all of that, or how all this comes together, these are incredible questions. And you're at the forefront of this, and this really fires the imagination. Anything to do with the stars, with space. It's incredible how it really engages the public. This was apparent to all of us with the very popular ABC stargazing event just 3 months ago. Our very own Anglo-Australian telescope and the spectacular Siding Spring Observatory were stars of the show, along with Brian Cox, who's a fantastic drawcard in his own right, as were many other professional and amateur astronomers around the country who contributed on screen and through social media to enthuse the public. And through ABC stargazing, we saw thousands of our fellow Australians become astronomy's captive audience, to appreciate what you as professional astronomers had already revealed, and to work enthusiastically and tirelessly to scan fresh data from NASA's Kepler Space Telescope to make a compelling discovery, a whole new solar system with 4 super-Earths orbiting close to their parent star. For me, this is astronomy's greatest strength, to engage the imagination and challenge what is possible. And in my role as a minister and as a policy maker who's also concerned about enthusing particularly young people to be more part of our science, technology, engineering and maths establishment as we go forward, the role astronomy and astronomers can play in enthusing people about STEM is very important, and we need to make sure that we continue to harness that. And with the ESO Australia partnership, our ability to do this, and to do this with the world's best, has grown exponentially. Through this strategic 10-year partnership with the ESO, our astronomers will be able to use the observatories at La Silla and Paranal in the Atacama Mountains of Chile. Just by way of a piece of trivia, I think it was at Paranal that they filmed part of one of the James Bond films, Quantum of Solace. So you see that facility out in the desert that just comes out of nowhere? That's you guys at Paranal. So even James Bond is interested in you. I'm delighted that Australian researchers will be able to compete for time on the best suite of optical infrared telescopes in the world and their advanced instruments. I'm even more delighted that Australian researchers will be exposed, not only to the world's foremost infrastructure for optical astronomy, but to arguably the world's best collaborations. Now, we punch above our weight as a country when it comes to knowledge creation. But if we're to continue to do that, global collaboration is key. I put out a science statement in March, and one of the key points there was not only our fundamental commitment as a government to basic research, as well as more applied research, but the importance of global collaboration around what we might describe particularly as big science, particularly where it involves infrastructure which is probably too big for one country to sustain by itself. And those sorts of collaborations are very important to us as a country. We get access to the best brains in the world, and they get access to our best brains. And we really feed off that. The technological transfer, the managerial know-how, the corporate memory that comes from that interaction is very important to us. So those global collaborations, from my point of view, are key to our success in establishing a real innovation mindset within our community. Innovation mindset with a global outlook. That's what we have to be about. So, answering the most important scientific questions about our universe and building on the knowledge we've already gained demands the most capable telescopes. It demands the most innovative instruments, the most powerful computers, the most advanced theoretical models, and a collaborative will to do what no country can achieve alone. Working at the forefront of astronomy and participating in global-scale projects pushes the envelope of what our scientists and technology experts, industry collaborators can achieve. Now, astronomy is an icebreaker discipline by nature, breaking through the existing problems to forge new pathways from which many other areas of science and industry can grow. For example, today's technical advances in astronomy may be in signal processing, image extraction, multispectral analysis, high-performance computation and data mining, precision robotics, optics and photonics, multi-parameter control systems, even in branches of higher dimensional mathematics used to model our cosmos. So what's my point here? My point here is that all of these are applications which have potentially a broader footprint. One of the things we learned, we used to have this debate in the 60s and 70s, and I'm old enough to remember this, around, why do we spend all this money on space travel? Yeah? There are still poor people in parts of the world. Why are we diverting money to science and technology and doing this? And yet the history of the 21st century, a large part of it, reflects the scientific and technical advances that were made in the defence and military establishments and in the space establishments in the 60s and 70s. That's not to say you'd limitlessly spend money on those, but my point is this. When you invest in basic science, yes, you do it for curiosity and to gain knowledge, but you have no idea, and that's the wonderful thing about fundamental science, you have no idea where that will take you and the applications and what they will be. That's the fundamental overarching reason why we need to keep not only focused on applied research, but on fundamental research. These advances and inventions can all contribute to tangible advances well beyond astronomy, to be developed by growing industry sectors and to benefit the public and our economy. The opportunities from astronomy for growing Australian businesses and developing our national industrial base and capability are almost unlimited. And even meeting the ESO's ongoing needs for new technologies, maintenance and development will generate opportunities for Australian firms to tender competitively for ESO work packages in a wide variety of activities. And that's the other point. In this business, if you want support, build a coalition of the willing. So always identify your stakeholders, those who benefit from what you do, including the industries and firms that then have a stake in what you do because it's of mutual benefit. Very important to remember that. And that's also important to me as Science Minister when I'm garnering support in the community for more funding for science. Many Australian firms host expertise that can help solve your challenges from the earliest scoping or design stages. Many of you have ideas, technologies and techniques with enormous commercial potential just waiting to be unlocked. Now you have the opportunity to play an active role in furthering Australia's efficient, talented and productive commercial sector to cultivate new frontiers in partnership with you and with the world. Now, astronomy, as I said before, is a global endeavour, a discipline that spans countries, technologies, wavelengths and time. ESO has long recognised this. Australian astronomers have explicitly told us this in their decadal plan. We have seen this through our ongoing collaboration and leadership over the last decade on the Square Kilometre Array project and its Pathfinder projects, ASCAP and the Murchison Wide Field Array in Western Australia. We see this in our participation in the multinational project to build the giant Magellan telescope, part of the next generation of optical and infrared telescopes that will push our gaze even deeper and earlier into the cosmos within the next decade. I've noticed this tendency for astronomers to give these interesting names to telescopes. Like there's the very large telescope. There's the extremely large telescope. I mean, I don't know what's happening next. Is it the ginormously expansive, huge telescope? I mean, you're running out of superlatives here. But it's just fantastic. We have seen this through the decades-long international engagement others continue to have with us through the world-class research and instrumentation activities at the Australian Astronomical Observatory and at the Australian National University's Advanced Instrumentation Technology Centre at Mount Stromlo. And you here in Australia in the astronomy sector have consistently argued the critical need for access to the world's best 8-metre telescopes. You've consistently called for long-term investment in fundamental research, and you've consistently advocated for ESO. But above all, we're in this position today, ready to commence this critical partnership because you, the Australian astronomy community, have consistently maintained your scientific excellence and standards and worked towards shared strategic goals. Your outstanding research performance in observational astronomy, world-class innovation in instrumentation, your expertise in theory and simulation, your willingness to collaborate, and the growing depth of talent that you have cultivated in our young scientists coming through our many astronomy active universities has made today possible. Today's agreement with ESO represents a culmination of your decades of work, engagement, discovery, teaching, learning, collaboration and perseverance. This is a great partnership that's beginning today. It's a real step up for Australian astronomy. I want to take the opportunity to thank Brian Schmidt for his advocacy in this sector. I want to thank Sue Weston from my department, who's done a lot of the legwork to make sure this gets done. She's the sort of public servant who always asks, well, if something is to be done, how do we get about doing it? In the appropriate way, but always, how do we get it done? How do we get it done? So Sue, you've done a great job on this. But what really struck me about this when I was first, because I came into the role in January, when I was first asked about this, was what does this do for us in the world? And the answer which came back very quickly is, this really is a huge step up for us. It shows that the knowledge and the skills we know we have, we can really now fully display on the global stage. So ESO, thank you for the partnership. Thank you to you, the astronomy community here in Australia, for your advocacy. And maybe I should thank the Treasurer and a few other people who also helped us get the money. But importantly, it was your advocacy. Today's an exciting day. Celebrate what you've achieved. And I look forward to the future and the great discoveries and research that come from this tremendous partnership. Thanks very much.
Minister Synodinos, I think that's probably the most excited that you'll ever see a science audience is with their science minister. You talk like us. You could even almost write an ARC grant now. Before I introduce Tim DeZeu, I was remiss in not acknowledging the first Australians on whose lands we meet today. And since, if you think about the reason we do astronomy, which is to share this resource, which is the sky and knowledge, something that humans have been sharing for millennia, I do feel remiss in not doing it. And so I will, behalf on everyone on the room, pay our respects to the elders of the Ngunnawal people, past and present, and emerging. And so with that, I now would like to have ESO Director General Professor Tim DeZeu come up. Tim has been a friend of Australian astronomy through collaboration before he became the DG of ESO. And as his role there finishes this year, I hope that we get to see Tim back on a regular basis doing the science that has bound us so closely together for the decades for several decades. And so, without further ado, Tim DeZeu, please come on.
Thank you, Brian. Minister Synodinos, Ms. Weston, Kelly, Professor Schmidt, Brian, Professor Kilburn, members of the Department of Industry, Innovation and Science, colleagues and friends. It's really a great pleasure to be here today for a ceremony which, as the Minister has already said, and Brian as well, which bodes very well for the future of astronomy and science worldwide, and in fact for society. Australian astronomy has a very distinguished history and is strong in both optical and radio astronomy, the windows in the atmosphere through which you can observe the universe. In the late 19th century, the legendary Great Melbourne Telescope, another GMT, so this innovative naming of telescopes has a long tradition. It was briefly the largest steerable telescope in the world. It was only surpassed in size by Lord Rosse's Leviathan of Parsonstown, but it was not fully steerable. And in the middle of the 20th century, Australia was amongst the pioneers of radio astronomy, and it retains a world-leading position in this area today. Australia's geographical location allows the best viewing of the center of the Milky Way, detailed study of the two Magellanic Clouds, the nearest galaxies, and of many, many other fascinating objects. And this is, of course, also the reason why ESO's telescopes are also in the southern hemisphere, except they're in Chile. There is much to see in the southern hemisphere. Australian astronomers also have a long tradition of working together, and that's clear from the series of comprehensive strategic plans that have been produced at regular intervals, and also from successful initiatives such as the CASTRO and ASTRO 3D partnership supported by the ARC. As already mentioned, access to state-of-the-art radio facilities is assured, and it includes the Murchison Wide Field Array and ASCAP on the way to the SKA. And the optical community continues to use the Anglo-Australian telescope, and indeed looks forward to the second GMT, the Giant Magellan Telescope, but it has no structural access to 8 to 10 meter class telescopes, which you might call the workhorses. Now, as the world population has grown, optical observatories have moved to more and more remote places. And it became clear that dry and high locations are the best. And while Australia has the former in plenty, finding sufficiently high mountains is harder. I'm keenly aware, being a Dutch boy, that it is very tricky to argue about Australia not having high mountains. But I think objectively we can say this. The 4-meter AAT is at 1,135 meters on Siding Springs. And it was indeed amongst the most successful 4-meter class telescopes and really did well for Australian astronomy. And I'm very pleased that some of you who made that a success are also here. As technology has advanced, it has however become possible to build fully steerable 8 to 10 meter class telescopes, but they are located in much higher sites, notably on Mauna Kea, the big island of Hawaii, or indeed in the Atacama Desert of Chile. And this is done to maximize the scientific output of these facilities. The Paranal Observatory is at 2,600 meters, and more than 90% of the nights are clear. And that's why it's worth making the additional investment to put it in such a remote location, because you can observe a very transparent night sky nearly every night and get a lot of science. As also already mentioned, discussions about Australian membership of ESO took place now nearly 25 years ago and progressed quite substantially. Australia already had observers in all the ESO committees, but in the end it did not come to fruition. It was clear already then, some years before the start of the operations of the Very Large Telescope, that there is a natural match between the Australian astronomy community and that of the ESO member states. In fact, as some of you may know, one of the instruments on the VLT, the Very Large Telescope, it's called Flames, has a kangaroo painted on it to alert everyone that the fiber positioner, affectionately known as AUSPAS, was built in Australia. And this natural match in interest holds today, and it should really surprise no one, because the ESO logo is enshrined in your flag, so there is just no way out. Today we sign a strategic arrangement which will give Australian astronomers, as well as the technical institutes and the industries, access to the entire Lacia Paranal Observatory, as we call it. It includes the 4 8-meter telescopes. You can see the domes here on the picture, with its uniquely powerful arsenal of instruments that together comprise the Very Large Telescope and its interferometer. There are 2 survey telescopes, and there is a venerable 3.5-meter class telescope. There are 2 venerable 3.5-meter class telescopes on Lacia. And together with the telescopes, ESO has a very thriving instrumentation program, which is carried out mostly not by ESO, but in close collaboration with the technical institutes in the member states. And all of them are keen to work with their Australian counterparts for the benefit of all. I'm told that I'm giving a talk about a little bit more detailed about this tomorrow morning at 8:30 is the latest I've been told, but we'll find out. And then for the astronomers, we'll go into some of this. ESO considers Australia as a member state for all matters relating to this observatory. And if you think it through, it was written in the stars, because even the distance from here to the observatory is the same as it is for all the member states in Europe. It involves a 14-hour flight, but okay. On a slightly more personal note, I was in Jeremy Mould's office the morning after the news came that it didn't work in the mid-90s. I happened to be visiting Stromlo and I found him in his office. You remember these times too. And I decided on that day, if I ever had anything to do with this, we should try to correct this decision, because it clearly is the natural match, as already mentioned. And therefore I'm extremely pleased that today this is actually happening. You have to be patient sometimes. Working visits in both directions were helpful in preparing the way forward. This happened initially mostly through discussions with the leading astronomers, and it included a very memorable one that no doubt Brian also remembers, sitting in the Sossusvlei in Namibia near a swimming pool thinking, how are we ever going to make this happen? 7 years ago. It came through membership in the ESO Science and Scientific and Technical Committee, first of Elaine Sattler and then Warwick Couch. Matthew Collis found himself appointed to the ESO Visiting Committee by a complete coincidence. And of course we had contacts with the leadership of the AAL and indeed with the department. And I remember very fondly an early visit by Patricia Kelly to ESO headquarters when we already proudly raised the Australian flag, which I believe Patricia was happy about at the time and a bit shocked, but it was all for a good cause. The relationship with the department intensified in 2014, in February, about 3.5 years ago, where we went through possibilities, although at the time it was clear this was not going to happen very, very quickly, but I personally believe that the homework we did then was quite helpful to have at least an opportunity identified that might be coming to fruition a few years later. And about a year ago, the outline of the current strategic partnership became clear. It started to gel, and both sides, I believe, have been working extremely constructively and effectively to make this happen. And I want to echo the Minister a bit by thanking all of those involved for their vision, strategic view, commitment and perseverance, including the Minister himself, of course, Mr. Synodinos, Sue, Patricia, Jane Urquhart, Claire McLaughlin, Andrew Stevenson, representing the government, as well as Brian Schmidt, Warwick Couch, and in fact the whole leadership of the AAL. Finally, I believe firmly that Australia's contributions to the partnership will strengthen ESO. And of course, we've already heard how important it is for Australia. And ESO's facilities will indeed allow Australian astronomers to make many discoveries and to develop the next generation of high-tech instrumentation to the benefit of science and technology worldwide. And I also believe this is a key step towards potential full membership of ESO in due course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim, and we look forward to hearing more from you over the course of the next couple of days. It is now my pleasure to introduce the President of the Astronomical Society of Australia, Professor Virginia Kilborn, to say a few words and to MC the signing of the document so I can tweet them live. Professor Kilborn.
Minister for Industry, Innovation and Science, Senator the Honourable Arthur Synodinos, and ESO Director-General, Professor Tim Desiu. As President of the Astronomical Society of Australia, and speaking on behalf of the Australian astronomical community, I'd like to thank you both for enabling this incredible partnership. This week, we're holding the annual scientific meeting of the Astronomical Society of Australia. This is an opportunity for the community to discuss their latest results and discoveries, ranging from star and planet formation, galaxy evolution, to the nature of dark matter and dark energy, and even the evolution of the early universe. The partnership with ESO will be a game changer in many of these fields, which will not only benefit current Australian astronomers, many of whom are in this room, but will also enable the next generation of students to delve into some of the most fundamental questions in astronomy. Access to this optical facility will also complement and enhance Australia's current and future radio astronomy capability. The opportunity to work with ESO in instrument development will ensure Australia keeps its place at the forefront in telescope innovation. Minister, Thank you not only for enthusiastically championing this agreement, but for seizing this opportunity and enabling its speedy implementation. This is pretty incredible. Coming into the role so early in this year, and we're signing today in July. I think that deserves a round of applause right there, actually. This agreement was one of the top priorities identified for Australian astronomy in the Decadal Plan, and it's going to leave a lasting legacy. I'd also like to say thank you to the department staff for all their hard work behind the scenes in getting this organised and ready for today's signing. Professor Desiu, thank you for welcoming Australia with open arms and helping us to join in this strategic partnership. We look forward to a long and fruitful partnership with both Australia and ESO in the future. So on that point, I think we should thank the Minister and Tim Desiu again. Well done. Thank you very much. It's now my great pleasure to invite you both to join at the table for the signing of the agreement.
The spelling looks okay, I think we'll sign it. And then, yes, you sign that one and then give it back to me, I think.
Yes.
We'll keep the originals. Excellent. Give you that back.
Yes.
And then
They've given me a sign here.
You will have to work out where you Very good.
good. No. That's great. Thank you.
Great.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.